Our Krill dog might, for once, be facing two different kinds of challenges, and neither of them have to do with his height. Hey folks, MasakoX here. This story started off as something rather peculiar based on the notion that there is no real concrete evidence that Shenron can, or cannot, transfigure somebody from one type of species to another. It's always been speculated that it was possible, but in my opinion, I believe it is certainly plausible, given the fact that whole planets can be restored, those who have been slain recently can also be restored, and natural events can be reset with no problem from our dragon. So, what's the harm of turning our little Kriller from one type of monkey into another type of monkey? A monkey who just so happens to be freakishly strong and one of the most imbalanced peoples in modern anime. Yeah, hey, you gotta admit, that little happy accident of his was ultimately a smart move. In the last part, Krillin and King Kai had finished months of training together whilst the Namekian Dragon Balls were being prepared to bring him back to life. All this after his heroics in eliminating Frieza in a very spectacular maneuver that would make most Marvel movies blush. It also gave us some possibilities for the future of Kaioken, so who knows who else might benefit from this. However, we still had the likes of the Frieza Force heading for Earth, this time being fronted solely by the likes of King Cold. He had been wronged by this group, and wanted to deal with this problem personally, assuming that, Vegeta was the one behind all of it. Well, not exactly. Though I'm sure he would gladly take the credit for it if circumstances were less world-ending. In the end though, despite the fact that Goku and Krillin were present for this battle, their services were not required. A woman from the future had arrived, whom we know as Lazuli, hint hint, and she was able to take down King Cold and send the majority of his men scampering home to lick their wounds and tell all that would follow that Earth was strictly off limits. The warning of the androids emerged from her, but it was a different kind of warning. It wasn't 17 and 18 destroying the future. I mean, 18 was right there. It was actually android 16. A 16 whose programming went haywire, and 17 from the future, known as Lapis there, succumbed to it, as well as many others. Our group now have to figure out what to do. But at least, hey, they've got an extra year in their pocket. With the thought of that future woman in his mind, and the feeling of her hand at the forefront of said thoughts, Krillin had been doing his best to train with Goku as best as he could. The two Super Saiyans clashed many days, them getting more and more confident in their transformation by the day. Then, Krillin remembered his time on King Kai's planet, and realised that he could now start to show the rest of the team that he hadn't forgotten about them since becoming a Saiyan, albeit the fact that he only fully realised what he was getting into later. One day, Krillin went up to the lookout to talk with Kami, and request that he could communicate with King Kai. However, the Guardian informed him that he actually could easily contact with King Kai on his own, since he had been with him for so long. That would have been enough to have established a connection, of some description. I will oblige this one time though, since you asked so cordially. Unlike Goku, I am charmed by his endearing manner, but sometimes I wish he would learn to be patient and take things a little slower. Krillin chuckled and said he was ready to talk. In his conversation with the Kai, he asked whether some of his friends could be granted passage to his planet to train, them being testbeds potentially for his more refined Kaioken. King Kai was, though, in two minds about this. Sure, it was great to have potentially willing subjects to practice this new Kaioken on, understanding that Krillin didn't really need to use the power much anymore now he had Super Saiyan, which was just as good. But at the same time, he had doubts. He did like being either with very few people or, better yet, on his own. He had been like that for 500 years prior to Earth's meddling when Goku and Krillin arrived. In the end, he accepted this proposal. But they better play by the rules and not eat me out of house and home. Oh, it'll be fine, King Kai. None of them are Saiyan, and one of them doesn't even eat. Him talking about Piccolo. The call ended, and Kami was admittedly impressed. How are you able to get through to him so easily? The King Kai I know was a classic loner, who wanted to spend as little time around people as possible. How did you get him to open up like that? Krillin brushed this aside. Oh, I provided him some, inspiration for his technique. I also think he liked I took an interest and offered my help. Kami bowed. If this works, this should be very advantageous for us in our future battles. Tenshinhan, Yamcha, and Chaozu were taken by Kami to the other world and told to traverse Snake Way to meet King Kai on his planet for some very intense training. Little did he realize that this wasn't really a challenge anymore. All of them could fly, and they arrived at the King's planet within a couple of hours, instead of the years it took most people who tried up until recently. However, there was one person who rejected this invitation. Piccolo. What's stopping you teaching me? Krillin was surprised that not only had the Namekian declined direct training, but the fact that he was even showing interest in being trained by him. Well, I didn't think that you'd, Please, this thing we're training for is bigger than any of our past differences. I could look past that. I want to learn this technique, but I also want to stay close to you and Goku. Your training regime could be useful for me as well. Krillin thought about this and reckoned that it should be alright for Piccolo to tag along for this training, seeing as Gohan liked him at least. He'd be happy. At least somebody would be happy. And so, the years of training before the androids arrived went like this. The trio of humanoid fighters spent their time on King Kai's planet, learning the arts of Kaioken and being like guinea pigs for the technique. Tenshinhan, naturally, took to this like a duck to water. He took it seriously, and very much liked the idea of this technique, bringing him back to some even keel with Goku, something he had always dreamed about, and now it was possible. Yamcha did well too, him wanting to keep up with his good friend. But Chaozu though, he struggled. Despite him having very interesting powers and techniques, his body was just not tough enough to withstand the power for very long. It was really just not practical. King Kai could sense his troubles and took him aside. Hey! What's the problem, little guy?
I'm not cut out for this power, King Kai. My small body is not meant for physical gains like this.
I see your point. But one good thing came out of this.
What?
If you'd been learning the old Kaioken, you'd have been torn to shreds long before now. So, that's something.
Chaozu didn't understand the casual nature of the statement.
Thanks?
I get it. You ain't exactly gonna be full pelt of the front line, kiddo. But we can at least steal you up in other ways and maybe improve the stuff you're already good at.
We can?
Sure. I know what you can do, all that psycho stuff. And if we can focus that... Hey! You might be good for the spirit bomb since your key manifestation's pretty good.
Chaozu beamed at that prospect. He didn't feel useless anymore. Sure, he and Tenshinhan's power set would be diverging a little bit, but at least the little vampire could do something while he was here, not feeling like a third wheel. Back on Earth, the arrangement of the quartet was going alright. Krillin wasn't used to training people in this way, and Piccolo wasn't exactly the best student. Their past was not meant to factor into this, but it still found its way into conversation, mostly in side remarks from the Namekian.
If my father could see me now, he'd be rolling in his grave.
Goku and Krillin weren't liking the reminders of the atrocities of King Piccolo all that much, but they were distracted by the fact that Piccolo was pretty good at handling Kaioken for a newbie. His body actually was able to handle the sheer intensity of it easily. The regenerative properties of his physique, meaning he could use levels of the power for much longer with less pain and stress.
Trust me, this is way less straining than my giant form. Remember that fight, Goku? I was in constant agony every second I used it.
Huh. Must have been a last resort kind of thing, huh?
Yeah. Shame it didn't work out in my victory, but oh well.
In fact, despite Krillin's lack of experience of being an educator of Kaioken, Kaioken times 50 was very much in Piccolo's sight, and this meant that he could, for quite a while, keep up with Super Saiyan, which did wonders for his training and increasing his fortitude. Gohan was very pleased about this, seeing his friend improving and keeping up. Granted, Piccolo wasn't thrilled in relying on these people's help, but this power was incredible, and this opportunity was not something to pass up. Besides, like he said, their fate was bigger than any petty squabble they had. Thanks to this extra year, it meant that the Dragon Team were more powerful than ever. But, with Yamcha being away on King Kai's planet, this meant that his relationship with Bulma had naturally broken down, with the time spent away from one another. This also meant that the likes of Vegeta could swoop in, due to this brash nature of his surprisingly clicking with Bulma, and sure enough, they had had a kid, whom was named Trunks, and he was also born a year earlier than in the original story. Vegeta's demeanour though wasn't any more endearing or loving in this story. In fact, he was finding the fact that not only were Kakarot and that imposter Saiyan now Super Saiyans at the same time, but now the Namekian was rubbing salt into the wound, rivaling this power for ever-increasing lengths. This would not do. He would find a better power on his own, away from here. He took the spacefaring ship from Capsule Corp and launched himself into his intense training in space during most of this time before the androids arrived, him only coming back every few months for supply gathering, as well as maybe some, booty calls. This extra determination did yield results for him though. Super Saiyan did come to him in this time, but his resolve would make him all the more venomous and willing to prove a point. Even though he had accepted that Krillin was starting to act more like a Saiyan than he had done when he first met him, he still couldn't quite get over the fact that all this power had come to a person who was not born from a Saiyan. But at least Vegeta wasn't wanting to see him dead anymore. Just be put in his place. By any means necessary. Progress? 4 years had passed and everyone was ready to go. Lazuli's warning had mentioned something about Immbalanced Island being the place where the androids would first strike. With the team making their way there, with Goku and Krillin heading the charge, the group as a whole weren't worried at all after what they'd been through. Goku and Krillin were the first to arrive on Immbalanced Island, and something dawned on them. They hadn't seen Vegeta in 4 years. He had not been around to check on them. Now, in fact, they couldn't even sense his energy on the planet.
Man, Vegeta picked the wrong time to be away on vacation, huh?
Said Krillin with a very terse aside.
Relax, buddy. We don't need him. This power we got is more than enough to take these robots down, surely.
Krillin nervously laughed.
I hope so.
Not long after that, the trio who had trained under King Kai arrived, followed by Piccolo. Tenshinhan was very pleased to see Goku, and he said that once this was all over, he would like to fight with Goku for old time's sake, as well as to test this new Kaioken power against him.
Not in your regular form, Goku. I would like to fight you in your golden power.
You're on, friend. It'll be like back in the tournament. Sounds fun.
Tenshinhan smiled, Goku smiling back, and then turned to Piccolo.
Seems like you too have gotten stronger, Piccolo.
How did you do it?
You know what I did. Surely you can tell from my energy.
So, you learned Kaioken too. It'll be interesting to see how yours differs from ours. Before they could bicker some more, Chaozu then spotted a small explosion located down on the island city below, and this was the call to action for all concerned. They would have to start this battle without the prince. However, an explosion is pretty obvious to see, but the very real realization that started to dawn on our gang was this. They couldn't sense the android's energy. Well, of course they couldn't. They weren't powered by ki, much like Lazuli was. They couldn't sense her power when she jumped cold on them all those years ago, so how would this be different? But speaking of Lazuli, Krillin had almost forgotten about her. When he was searching the city, he wondered to himself whether she would come back to help, like she said, and maybe even indeed bring backup.
I hope we're strong enough to stop this.
Just then, Krillin spotted two weird-looking individuals who were wearing auspiciously baggy pants. These were the androids. Krillin could recognize their insignia, being that of the Red Ribbon Army. Him all too well remembering the times they had previously been acquainted with the squad. He could maybe just waste them right now, in Super Saiyan, under the cover of being hidden. But this was something he couldn't do. His Saiyan nature of revenge and a desire for bloodlust got the better of him. He decided to tackle them head on. I'm not sure whether that was right to do though. He leapt out of his cover and faced Dr. Gero and Android 19 head on, but they were left not intimidated, but confused.
You are not Son Goku. 19, who is this fool?
Scanning. Krillin looked determined, him not backing down from his previous leap of courage. Scanners provide a 78% match for the subject known as Krillin.
Krillin, huh? A human. Very bold of you to step in front of us like this.
Human? Buddy? Things have changed a lot since I last ran into the likes of you.
19, this fool is clearly deluded. Deal with him. Perhaps this might be a strong enough message for Son Goku. He should take our conquest seriously.
19 then surged forward and began to fight Krillin in his base form. But the Saiyan wasn't initially worried at all. 19's power wasn't that bad. I mean, sure, Super Saiyan might be needed later on, but for now, he could talk with this clown for a bit. Or at least, he would have done that had he not been grasped by the leg and suddenly felt very tired. Jiro smiled deeply.
Whatever you are, you clearly underestimated our abilities. Now your energy will be used against you, as 19 drains you dry.
Krillin turned to see 19's smug face looking back at him. The drain was very quick, much faster than he thought it would be. He was taken by surprise, because this weren't no gimmick. Once again, the Saiyan part of his mind led him into a very unnecessary battle. If only he had just gone back and alerted the others instead of going in on his own. Now, he didn't know what was going to happen. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. So what do you folks think? Will Goku and friends be able to sense Jiro and 19's draining of Krillin? Or will it be too late? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!